Welcome back to Around the Table with Stacy Smith as we take a look at the political scene, both locally and nationally, and also now statewide. While we are handicapping the election, I want your opinions on the election for state Supreme Court justice. Not a lot of attention is being paid to the court elections, but they can be extremely important. There is a vacancy on the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court, with the court now split with 4 Democrats and 2 Republicans. There are supposed to be 7 justices, so they're down 1 justice. If the Democrats win the seat, it further galvanizes their hold on the court, probably for years to come. The candidates are Democrat Daniel McCaffrey against Republican candidate Carolyn Carluccio. So, Jim Byrne, does McCaffrey have the edge in this election?
I believe that he does. And this election, this court election, especially after the Dobbs decision last year, is a strong, stark reminder to all of us that there really is no such thing as an off-year election. And this cycle is very reminiscent, in my opinion, of the 2015 cycle, when we had 5 candidates statewide for judge on the ballot. And the 3 of them were Supreme Court that year. They were David Wecht, Christine Donahoe, and Kevin Doherty. And we won those, the Democrats. And they won the Superior and the Commonwealth. This is very similar to that. You have 1 for Supreme, 2 Superior, 1 Commonwealth. So again, let's look at what happened from 2015 until now. The drawing of maps, the rolling of the gerrymandering, and making fair and equitable maps. And look at the difference that has made. How many times have we seen the state Supreme Court step up as a backstop against overreaching? I would submit we've seen it with this court. And I think voters are starting to pay attention to that too, just like they're paying attention in Allegheny County to the chief executive and DA races in the last month, as we've discussed in the prior 2 segments. Dan McCaffrey, I think, has an advantage for those reasons, because of the safety net that is required when you have the majority in the Senate belonging to the GOP. Number 1, I think he's more qualified. Number 2, and number 3, I believe that Dobbs decision from last year is still resonating nationally, locally, and statewide, and I think that is going to be dragging down and has continued to drag down his opponent. So I think Mr. McCaffrey, in a close race, will be successful.
Well, I think, Stacy, you're right to highlight the fact that this is a very critical race for the GOP in Pennsylvania. If we go down another seat in the 7-seat Supreme Court, probably not in my lifetime or yours will we see a Republican majority. So this is a critical race. And to a degree, I think there could be some reverse coattails. Usually coattails are from the top of the ticket down because of the spike in Republican turnout and swing Democratic turnout for Joe Rockey, who we all generally believe will be successful here in Allegheny County, the second largest population base in the state. That could bode well for Carolyn Carluccio, the Republican. The other thing that I always think bodes well on judge races is the fact that she is a qualified woman seeking the Supreme Court. And we all know that women are still very underrepresented in elected offices in Pennsylvania. For that reason, I think this very ugly race could be pretty tight, and I would give a small edge to the Republican.
Stacy, women are underrepresented in government, certainly, and in politics across the Commonwealth, but not on the bench anymore, not on the appellate bench in particular. It's advantage a woman candidate in judicial races, it seems. The question is, are women voters to be taken for granted because it's a woman candidate? Carluccio has tried to hide her anti-abortion, a very strict anti-abortion stance, by wiping her records, her public record of her position. And I think that she may stumble over the very thing that defeated the Republicans in Kansas, of all places, in other places across the land, on the right for a woman to make her own health decisions with her physician. I think that's really the critical issue here.
Stacy, I think with this race, it's going to be turnout across the state, but particularly turnout in Philadelphia and Allegheny County. I think the turnout in Allegheny County, because of these 2 races, is going to be a little higher than normal than it would have been. In Philadelphia, the mayor candidate there has no opposition. So I wonder, and Jim, you could probably address it better than I can, does that have people say, there's nothing for us to vote for because it's not the mayor? Sherelle Parker, who is the mayor, used to be a state rep, worked very well with me, even though a Democrat when I was governor. I think very highly of her. And they're ready to get rid of Jim Kenney as the mayor over there. I don't know that the turnout's going to be over there is sufficient to overcome what happens in the Republican T. And I think the Republicans are probably working very hard to say, we got to get another Republican on the bench.
Governor, yeah, if I may, Stacy, yes, Governor, let me answer that. Normally, I would agree that there's nothing to motivate the Philadelphia folks to come out because there's really nothing being contested. But this one's a little different. You've worked with her. You've met the nominee. I had a chance to meet her and spend some time with her at the last state committee meeting, and she was one of the speakers. Chairman Sharif Street was honoring Governor Rendell, and so there was good contingency of Philadelphia folks there. And she gave an address that just had that room on its feet. And she talked about no such thing as an off-year election. And the fact that Chairman Brady and she both got a unity breakfast together right before Memorial Day, unlike what happened here, is motivated many of her opponents to get out there and be motivated to get Philly back to where they're producing like they used to. And there's a little bit of a competition between Allegheny and Philly right now on that issue. Allegheny was bragging last cycle about how their turnouts and their numbers were more productive than Philly. Chairman Brady doesn't like that. The Philly guys don't like that. It's a Pittsburgh Philly thing once again. So they're motivated to try to get that mail back from us. So I think there will be turnout there that will help Danny McCafferty. And also, we created a rural caucus when I was chairman. There is a lot of activity out in the T to address the what used to be a slight fly over the middle of the state. There's a lot of grassroots going on out there, Governor. So in factoring that in, I think Mr. McCafferty has an advantage.
But that's why I think this race, you really can't call it. I think it's going to come down to turnout.
It very well may. I'm going to throw this one out because it has to do with the state Supreme Court justices. We only have about a minute and a half to talk about this particular subject. And that is the people who are funding both of these candidates. And then they are going to be justices on the Supreme Court. You've got the Republican candidate being funded by a billionaire and those who are let's see, hospital organizations are funding her as well. On the other side, you've got a Democratic candidate who's being funded a lot by the Trial Lawyers Association of Philadelphia. I just question about having the candidates for court affiliated with parties and getting money from them. How can they necessarily go to the court and then be, unbiased?
That
Well,
issue
Stacey,
is not
we have to
indigenous to this
decide whether
race.
you want
That
to elect
issue is
judges or
something that
appoint
we've
them.
seen
Whoa.
forever.
Well, yeah, everybody's talking at the same time here. So
One of you.
yeah, Joe first.
Well, you have to decide whether you want to elect judges or appoint them. We've chosen to elect them. For a while, we did not have partisan races in the appellate courts, but some years back, we went back to partisan races because it was believed that they're policymakers and they should reflect a particular philosophy of a particular political party. But you have the United States Supreme Court to thank for this. They wrote in Citizens United that money is speech, and the First Amendment protects their ability to spend all the money they want in these races. And that's what they're doing. They're speaking loudly because they have a lot of money to speak loudly with.
That's the paradox of whether you go with appointments or whether you go with elections, and the necessary evils that go with whatever decision you make. If you want to elect them, they need to raise money. That's not indigenous to this race. If you want to appoint them, then the masses who have a right to choose leadership and those who are going to decide their lives are going to put that in the hands of someone else. And when you get more than one person in a room on appointments or anything else, you're already injecting politics.
All right.
I agree with both of them. When you're electing judges, you have to raise money. It's really tough to raise money in politics, particularly tough when you're running for judge. And that's why these special interests have a lot of power. And that is a concern, Stacy.
Okay. We have to take a break. We'll be back in just a moment.